We're thrilled to talk to you about pre-exam planning for 2021 and beyond. There's been a lot of changes that have happened on the regulatory side, and at this point, we really don't know the focus of the FDIC, the OCC, the Federal Reserve, CFPB, the respective state banking departments. We do know that there are emphasis areas that are changing from before, certainly in the fair lending area. We do expect to see more attention on asset quality, underwriting, fair lending. So there's a lot going on right now. And what we really need to do is we need to figure out how to be prepared for the examiners when they come into our institution. So this presentation is going to be a very high-level overview of FinPro's pre-exam planning approach. It's been very successful. It is staffed with ex-regulators who have held very senior positions in the federal banking agencies. And let me please walk you through in the next 5 minutes how we approach it. Now, what's interesting here is we polled the industry and we found that only about 35% of the industry performs a pre-examination analysis and considers it very thorough. The remaining 65% either can see needs for improvement or do not do it at all. So this is a critical need within the industry. There is no doubt that failing to have a management structure that identifies, measures, monitors, and controls risks is an unsafe and unsound practice. The regulators have said it time and time again. This quote actually comes out of the regulatory literature. So what I'd like to do is just share with you the notion of pre-exam planning and the regulatory examination. When you have pre-exam planning that takes place a couple months before the planned examination, the outcome is a productive examination with accurate results. I mean, that's critical. We want the results to be accurate. There's less aggravation, there's less heartburn, there is very little or no animosity with the examiners. Unfortunately, if we don't do pre-examination properly, often the results can be unproductive, or what's even worse is when we have inaccurate or misleading results. So what we want to do is we want to talk about what it means pre-exam planning, and it's really got two parts to it. It's got an enterprise risk assessment or scorecard approach, and it has a deep dive approach. So the high level scorecard approach, and what I'm going to show you is just a handful of slides, but this scorecard approach actually has more than 80 slides supporting the analysis. But it's an approach where we look at an institution and we compare that institution prior quarter, current quarter, compare it to various risk thresholds, and then also compare the results to two comparative groups. In this case, I'm showing you a mid-Atlantic comparable group and a high-performing comparable group within the $500 to $1 billion range. The key here is anytime we do financial analysis, it should always be a level and trend analysis and some sort of analytical comparison to other peer groups, a geographic peer group, a high-performing peer group. And you can see the utilization of green, yellow, red, suggesting where there may be problems, where there are warning signs, and where things seem to be progressing from a financial metric perspective appropriately. And there's a number of ways to analyze this data. So here's just another chart showing the same approach, but looking at the bank's history over the past 8 quarters. We're very big into visuals. So here's another representation. This happens to be yield on earning assets. You can see the blue bar is the current bank. The brownish bar is the high performing. The grayish bar is the mid-Atlantic peer group. So you can see, again, level and trend over 8 quarters. What has the blue bar done and how does it compare to the high performing group, the comparable group? And then also you can see behind these bars, the green, yellow, red, suggesting if this is in the comfort zone or if it's a warning sign or if we have problems if we're in the red. The scorecard approach also looks at loan concentrations. Where are the concentrations? We start with categories aligned with call reports, and then we move forward from there. But concentration risk, as everybody knows, is critical, and it needs to be part of the pre-exam planning process. And this is just one more slide. Again, there's 80 plus slides in in the scorecard approach, but we look at liquidity in this example. And do you have enough cash liquidity, on balance sheet liquidity, total liquidity? So we look at a lot of metrics. All this work is done to look at financial metrics over a period of time to gauge the bank's performance in relation to various risk thresholds. It's the critical first step in the process. The second step in the process is where we really deploy the FinPro regulatory team. We do a deep dive. This deep dive has a list of 51 questions or areas that we work with the bank in exploring and seeing if there are any weaknesses. You want the FinPro examination team to identify the weaknesses so they can be corrected before the examiners come on site. I can't even recall a situation where we did not find weaknesses or problems. So I just wanted to walk through what some of these areas are that are part of our 51 categories. You know, we're going to look at changes in the board, changes in the executive team, changes in your external audit firm, changes in policies and procedures. All these areas are critical for us. I mean, we look at corporate governance as part of this. What does your board look like? What's the tenure of the board? What sort of committees do you have? What's the expertise? And just continuing with this process, and I'm not going to go through all 51. I want this to be a high-level presentation. Hopefully you'll call if you're interested. We're going to be looking at if there's any individual dominance, if you have the same chairman of the board and CEO, do you have a lead independent director? We're going to look at debt obligations. We're going to look at anticipated dividends. These are all areas you want the examiners, the FinPro examiners, to look at and to gauge the risk associated with these areas. Some other areas, because we want to be very careful in this approach that we are not just looking backwards. We don't want to rely only on lagging indicators. We very much want to be looking at leading indicators. So as an example, you can see on number 33, we're going to be looking at your cash out refis, your non-recourse, your interest only lending. Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Is it within your market area? Is it outside your market area? We're going to be pulling all of this kind of information. You can see in number 38, what's our outstanding litigation look like? 36, are we looking at large depositors? When did they come in? A lot of institutions have seen an inflow of depositors over the last 12 months. What does that mean? Are these surge deposits? How are we gauging these deposits? Number 43 simply reinforces BSA is a hugely important area. We're going to be looking at, have you changed your BSA officer? Obviously, we'll be looking at some SARs and CTRs that have been filed, what the trend lines look like in those areas. 49, we're going to be looking at adversely classified assets, special mention, your internal rating system, the trend lines associated with those. In 50, you can see succession planning for executive officers and directors, and 51 vendor management program. So these 51 areas are the roadmap for the FinPro examination team. And by the way, this team, if you put it together, has hundreds and hundreds of years of examination experience. So we're able to come in with a great understanding of your risk profile, the way the examiners examine your institution, the hot buttons, and we're able to provide a lot of insight and a lot of value so that you can get prepared for your examination. If any of the contents in this presentation are of interest to you, please call me. This is Scott Polikoff. I'm an Executive Vice President at FinPro. I can be reached at 908-234-9398, extension 102, or please feel free to email me. You can see my email address is SPOLAKO, F as in Frank, F as in Frank, at finpro.us. Thank you for spending the time with me today and allowing me to walk through FinPro's pre-exam planning process. Have a great day.